Good morning. I'm going to start back in chapter 16 of Genesis this morning. It says, Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold now, the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. Oh, Sarai, no faith in what God had said about herself. I believe she had faith about Abram, but not about herself. Why? Well, he was 85 by then, and she was 75, and she'd never had a child. Now me, I think I would have believed the Lord rather than give my husband to another woman. I'm sorry. I think I would have said, Lord, you must be going to give me children because I'm his wife. But she didn't think that. She thought it wasn't possible, I guess. And when we look at see if Hagar's name is verse 1. Let me look, see if the Hagar's name has a meaning. That's sometimes interesting to see. Hagar. This Bible's real good. It has those things in the back of it. Let's see. Use your Bible. Whatever sources it gives you, use it. It might help you to understand more about the Bible. And Hagar. Oh, guess what it means? Fight. We know. Oh my. Talked about Ishmael. We'll talk about that in a while. Okay, about the baby she had. So, and the Bible says that Abram, he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. She had no respect for Sarai anymore. Why? Because it was her fault that Abram hadn't had children. He could have children, but he was with a woman that couldn't. And she could. Hagar could. So she thought, boy, I'm the main wife now. I'm the main one. Sarai's nothing. She was despised by Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom, and when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. Oh my, Sarai is blaming him, isn't she? She said, My wrong be upon thee. You shouldn't have hearkened to me. You shouldn't have listened to me. You should have said, no. Oh well. But Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. I'm not going to side with her against you. He loved her, didn't he? And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. Hagar was a slave, a handmaid. I guess she was a slave. She had to do what Sarai said. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. I don't know where Shur is, but it must have been near Hebron where they lived. And found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence comest thou, and whither wilt thou go? So God made her know, this is how I see you. He spoke to her. The angel of the Lord spoke to her, which was the Lord speaking through the angel of the Lord. And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress, Sarai. You know, it's interesting to see where it says the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. Found her. It's almost like he was looking for her and found her, though the Lord knew right where she was. But he came to her. The Lord came to Hagar, Sarai's maid. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. Ishmael, let's see, it tells what that means in verse 11. And it says, The well of him that liveth and seeth me. That's what she named the well. The name of Ishmael meant, it means afflicted her. I'm going to look back here in here to see, because you know Ishmael is the father of many of the Arabs, many of the people that in this day believe in Muhammad. And we know that there has been some strife in their hearts and lives against the Jews. Okay, let's look at Ishmael. Ishmael. May God hear. So, but it said verse 6. Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. That's what it means. It means that the Lord had heard her affliction. And then he told her, and he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. So Ishmael got his mama's name, Fight. His mama's name meant fight. And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? So Hagar was, I think she was astounded that God met her, that God talked to her, that God stopped her from leaving and sent her back to Sarai. I think she was astounded at all of it. And wouldn't you be? She didn't have any thought that someone, I know she knew Abram served the Lord. I'm sure she knew all of that. But I don't think she knew that that would happen to her. That he would speak to her. But he did. And she said, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And that's where it says the name of it meant the well of him that liveth and seeth me. Liveth. You know, sometimes we wish there was a living God. Yes. Have you been lost away from God and you wish there was a living God that would just somehow help you? And then suddenly he's alive, and you know he's alive, and you know he sees you, and know he's with you. I'm sure that changed Hagar. I'm sure it changed her in so many ways. It helped her to submit herself to her mistress. And Hagar, verse 15, bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. So Hagar bare Ishmael when Abram was 86 years old. A score is 20. So 80 is 80 and 6. So that's 86 years old Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. So what do you think about all this? You know, I've gone through this whole chapter, and I'm sure there's more to talk about in this chapter. But this chapter is really strange to me. It showed that Sarai didn't believe that she was going to have children. And I know sometimes that's the way it gets with us. We want something, we want a child, or we want, we want something that we've been seeking the Lord for, and it doesn't look like it's going to come until we actually don't believe it will. And I guess that's what Sarai, she came to a place when she's 75 years old that she doesn't believe she's going to have a child. And, she had a husband, but I'm 75. I'm a widow, but could I have a child if I were married? If the Lord wanted me to, I could. And that's the way, I guess, us Christians feel, that with God all things are possible because we have a relationship with Him. And Sarai, she followed Abram. She was Abram's wife. But it's not really in here that she had a relationship with him. That she had her own relationship with the Lord. And you can be a wife of a man that loves God and serves God, but you can not know the Lord and not have your own relationship with Him. And that's what it seems to me about Sarai, is she knew about the Lord. She said, "The Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid." Did it say that she prayed about this? She asked the Lord, should I give him Hagar my maid? No, she just told him to do it, that I may obtain children by her. So her thought was, this, if Hagar has a son or a child, I'll be his mama, because I own Hagar. But it didn't work out that way. But so she said, Sarai said unto Abram in verse 5, "My wrong be upon thee." I've done wrong. My wrong. She had it all wrong. She thought, well, they'll be my children because they're Abram's. But she forgot about Hagar. And she didn't understand that it was going to cause trouble in the family. Big trouble. And it has been trouble ever since. But she thought this was the solution. Let's think about that, ladies. When you think something is the solution and you haven't run it through the Lord, you haven't asked God what's His will about it, I think you better take some time to talk to the Lord about it before you say, let's do this. I remember I thought the solution for people not coming to our church from Highland City is we must need to move somewhere else. And I asked my husband, will you go to the Lord and you ask Him, is there someplace else we could go where we'd be accepted better? Well, at least I didn't just say, we're moving. You like it or not, we're moving. Well, I couldn't do that anyhow because he wouldn't do it. But, I could have pressed about it and said, there must be someplace else. Let's go look for someplace else. But oh, I asked him to pray about it, and he did. He came back and said, the Lord said, you're right where I want you, doing right what I want you to do. And it was true. And I'm glad that he heard from the Lord about it. And so Sarai, she didn't say, Abram, would you go to the Lord and see if it's all right if you go into Hagar, my maid, and I can have a child by her? No, she didn't say that. She said, I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. She asked him to go into her maid. And then she gave him. She took her maid and gave him to be his wife. So she knew she had done wrong after Hagar thought she was nothing because of she couldn't have children and Hagar could. I imagine Hagar thought, oh, now I'm going to be the main wife. I'm not going to be the slave anymore. But that wasn't the way the Lord wanted it. So it's a very interesting chapter, isn't it? And it makes us women know that we need to know the mind of the Lord before we get ourselves and our husbands into any trouble. So talk to the Lord yourself, or tell your husband your thought and let him pray about it. Okay? Okay, I'm going to go. I'll see you tomorrow, Lord willing.